My mind is clearer now. At last, all too well, I can see where we all soon will be. If you strip away the myth from the man, you will see where we all soon will be. Jesus, you've started to believe the things they say of you. You really do believe this talk of God is true. And all the good you've done will soon get swept away. You've begun to matter more than the things you say.
Episode 13 of Godless Smegcast. Yes, it's the 13th episode. For those of you that are superstitious, bollocks. Last week's episode was A Scotsman Abroad, an Atheist Blobfish. All three of us have had great feedback over that episode, so thank you very much for that. It was really, really enjoyable to do. Both guys were not only funny, but actually had something sensible to say, you know. So, really, really pleased with the episode, and I'm glad you guys liked it. But today, I have somebody who I've been looking forward to interviewing for a little while. I've only just started following her fairly recently, since my chat with Zoe Jen a few weeks ago. I think Zoe was the one that turned me on to Jessica. But I have with me, her Twitter name is @ECBlade. Her name is Jessica. She's an amazing human being, and I'd like to welcome her to the Smegcast. Hi, Jessica.
Hi.
Hi,
Thanks for having me. I'm okay, thanks. I'm doing good. You okay?
Good, yeah, not so bad. Now, what is it? It's like just gone 10 a.m. where you are, 10:30 a.m., something like that.
Right, it's about 10:30. Mm-hmm.
Right, you're on the East Coast.
Yes, I am. I'm in Virginia.
Oh, you're in Virginia, huh?
I am in Virginia. I'm actually 22 miles south of Washington, D.C.
Wow. Yeah, they are pretty close together, aren't they?
Yeah, well, Washington, D.C., or the Federal Triangle, was carved out of Virginia and Maryland. So it's its own little triangle around the Potomac River. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and let's face it, CIA's pretty close as well, isn't it, to that? So
Closer to some of us than others.
Yeah. So you have your husband is Geordie Atheist, I believe.
Yes, he is. He absolutely is. That's my husband. His name is Martin, and he's brilliant. Yeah.
I've only actually in the last few days started following him as well, because I had no idea that you guys were related. I've seen his tweets retweeted into my timeline, and I think he followed me. An American marrying a Geordie. That's how did you first find the accent?
He will tell you that in reference to his work, when he has to call places like in Canada, everyone mistakes him for a Scot because he has and he's not at all, but he really only lays on the thick Geordie accent when he wants to make sure I don't understand what he's saying. Generally, he cleans it up for me, which is not bad. And when he turns on the real Geordie, then I make sure that I turn on the Virginia drawl, and then we don't understand a fucking word each other's saying, so it's okay.
I guess you both need to employ a translator, or get
a
universal translator when situations
we do. We kind of, and we do a lot of hand gestures, and I find that the answer really is just food or beer. I don't understand here, eat. But no, he is absolutely one of the finest people I've ever known. So
okay,
yeah.
So he's in the northeast of the UK at the moment, and you're in Virginia. Do you mind me asking why you're a continent apart?
Well, we actually only got married on January 14th.
Oh, congratulations!
Thanks. Yeah, and we have maintained this sort of long distance relationship, but we haven't been together very long, and we're sort of working out honestly on a spreadsheet, what's the best place to be? Do I need to be in the UK? Does he need to be here?
Yeah.
And there are all kinds of family things, you know, because I have 2 children.
Yeah.
And so really we're only separate until we know exactly where we should be. And at this point, I think we're both ready to like quit our jobs and move to Guinea-Bissau. But there you go.
and for that, I wouldn't blame you, because, you know, love does conquer all. What's it looking like at the moment? What you're sort of leaning towards at the moment? A life in the UK or a life in the States?
We lean toward a life in the UK because my nursing qualifications translate easily there.
Yeah.
He actually works for the government. And the last thing, honestly, we need in Northern Virginia is another civil servant. Really, we'll probably be over there. I will be in the UK the last week of March. I'm bringing my teenager. That could be funny. And then just to introduce her to it.
Speaking of your profession as a nurse, I just wanted to tell you, actually, it was Marv the Martian, who was my guest on episode, I think 11 he was on.
Yeah.
He turned me onto your blog. Now, I read your first post a few days ago, and I read your second post today. First of all, I just want to ask you, how's Richie doing?
You know, he's doing as well as can be expected. His father, and as I've explained in my blog, of course, his father and my father trained him as a police officer.
Yeah.
My dad's been gone for 3 years, and then, and now Richie's dad. And my mom was, she and my father were married for 48 years until my father's death. And then Mr. K has always been in our lives. And so his loss has been a profound effect on my mother as well.
Yeah.
And Richie, you know, having lost my dad, it is a club I would wish no one to be a member of. It is, it's so hard to lose parents, and I don't care how old you are and if it's expected or not. So, yeah, he, is in regular contact with my mom in particular, because they really have that, you know, close connection. And so I think he settled in on the details, and that's what I think what most people do after an event like this. But I think he's going to ultimately, I think he's going to be okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's sad that something like this had to happen to kind of bring you and Richie together again, because as you say in your blog post, you didn't part on the best of terms with Richie. But it's just a shame that something like this happened to bring you both back together. And I hate to use the American word closure, but precisely achieve that, you know.
Well, you know, just because things didn't end well, and he knows that, and I certainly do too. Sometimes it is sad that it takes these events, but my perspective also from a professional standpoint is sometimes you just have to put that stuff aside and do the right thing. Yeah. And just do what's right. And he needed help. I was in a position to offer that kind of professional help. And even if Richie was the last person in the world that I could stand, which isn't necessarily the case, but even if that were so, out of respect for his father, of course I would have done that. Respect for his father, respect for my mother. That's, you know, you just have to do what's right. And in the end, all of those small and petty grievances that seem so large and insurmountable over time, they're insurmountable once there's death. Richie has a sister, and father were estranged and remained estranged, and even at the time of his death. And so now that's something she has to live with forever. And forever is a long time.
I just want to tell you, I think your blog, I meant the tweet that I sent earlier, I meant every word of it. I think your blog is amazing. If you've not read Jessica's blog, please do. I can find it at nurseunbelievable.com. Let's jump into some questions then, because I understand you're a little bit of a dwarfer.
Yes, and I first came to Red Dwarf through public television here in the States.
Yeah.
I had graduated high school. I went to my undergraduate, and late night public TV was where you could get your fix. You know, that's when you could get your young ones. You could get original Monty Python episodes, and that's how I stumbled across Red Dwarf. And I was like, that's me. I am the youngest, and I'm kind of the fuck up. And I was And it's true. And nobody believes this about me, but it is true. I am the youngest of four. I have three older brothers. And because I'm the youngest and completely and totally spoiled, I just, that's why I just loved it so much.
I think there's a little bit of Lister in everybody, isn't there?
There really is, because, we all, or at least I feel like we're all sort of dreamers and sometimes have these unrealistic expectations and, you want your farm, even if it's under 3 feet of water in Fiji. But I really fell in love with it. Absolutely did. And there was something, it also seemed, and everything is so slick now. The production is so slick.
Yeah, whereas in the early days it was kind of held together with chewing gum and sticky tape and elastic bands. Yeah,
exactly.
It has gone very high tech, but you've got to move with the times. I think that's more, an aesthetic decision.
Yeah, there's truth in that. And then, of course, there were so many references. And I loved Martin asked me, what my favorite moment is. And it's not, I think, a usual favorite moment, but when Crichton is first introduced, that very first episode where he's introduced, and then he says, and then they go into the On the Waterfront, what are you rebelling against? What do you got? And then he's in Marlon Brando's jacket with the cap. Because I love that movie so much. I loved On the Waterfront. I saw that and I was like, okay, I'm hooked. That's the best ever.
So that's the first episode you saw was Crichton, was it?
That was the very first episode I saw, and then I did my best to get to see repeats when they came through. But I think one of the greatest things we have available to us, Netflix and other places that you can go back and watch entire series. I love that.
Yeah,
you can really get your hands on it. I love it.
And I believe in preparation for this Smegcast, you've been doing something of a Red Dwarf marathon. What have you been watching?
I have had it on almost continually to the horror and devastation of my teenager, because I watch through my Xbox.
Yeah.
And therefore, if I'm watching through my Xbox, she can't game. No. I'm like, no, I'm sorry, I'm right here. So I've been up through Series 7.
Right.
In preparation for the Smegcast, and I'm just like, and I am nervous, of course. I was like, I've forgotten everything. I've forgotten it all. How could that happen?
Well, do you know the words to the Rimmer Munchkin song? If you're in trouble, he will save the day.
Yes.
He's brave and he's fearless, come what may. Yeah, it's great.
No, I refuse to sing. I just can't do it. Because my husband will listen to this, and I know.
I know. Series 7 isn't bad. It's not as good as its predecessors, but it's still okay. It's got some very funny moments.
Yeah, and really, I don't know if I just personally lost it, or if I didn't quite understand. But by the time Series 8 came out, I was like, it didn't quite feel the same to me. And I have not seen, I haven't seen 9. That hasn't been available to me.
Back to Earth.
Yeah, the Back to Earth series. I mean, I know that, so I haven't even really been able to tell. Was it over here? Nobody knows Red Dwarf. No one knows, even though it's on Netflix and people are discovering it now. So it's hard for me to gauge what the reaction would be. But in the Back to Earth, I think I've seen, parts and pieces online, sort of YouTube video and things like that, but I haven't caught the plot. I haven't. It's true.
Okay, number one of the reasons for this podcast is to spread Red Dwarf and to spread people's awareness of it and to get people watching it. So that's one of the purposes of this. Even though we don't go into detail on Red Dwarf a lot on this, I mean, I think the only Red Dwarf dedicated podcast really that we did was the one with Keith, Matt, and Neil a couple of weeks ago. But yeah, that's one of my missions. And secondly, with regard to Back to Earth, it's one of those that you if you don't watch it, it won't really affect your enjoyment of Series X. But Series X is excellent. Have you watched that?
Series X is not available over here. I have not been able to. I have to actually buy Series X.
Right,
And
buy
so,
it. Buy
yeah.
it. Because
okay, I'm on it. I'll buy it now. Where's my one click?
In episode 3, which is called Lemons, the crew meet Jesus. So,
okay, yeah, I'm buying
and
that
it's
now.
probably the funniest episode of the series. This, particularly to atheists like us. I mean, you'll just eat it up with a spoon. You will love it.
Okay, I'm buying it now. I'm absolutely buying it now. That's worth it. Right there. There we go.
So, what's your favourite episode? Is it Crichton, or is it another one like Gunman of the Apocalypse, or, maybe Back to Reality?
Gunman and here's part of the difficulty for me, because Gunman of the Apocalypse is so many people's favorite episode that even though I absolutely love it, I do, it's not my favorite. And in some cases there's some nostalgia for me in that the first series really is my favorite because it just hit me at such a time when I was, and I just really felt out of place where I was going to college or university. I've now learned the difference between college and university, thanks to my husband. So where I was going to university, I felt out of place and I felt like I didn't really belong. So that first series, it really, really, absolutely spoke to me. And I think that that is my favorite moment. I mean, the Crichton episode is my favorite moment. And I think in part it remains one of my favorite episodes when he's getting the girls ready.
Yeah.
And the skeletons with the hair and, I was in anatomy and physiology at the time. I had an articulated skeleton in my dorm room. It was just brilliant for me. So I really can't get away from that. And when I was starting this, my daughter was like, "What are you doing?" I said, "Come here, you gotta watch this. You just gotta watch it." And she's looking at me like, "Oh my God, I didn't know this about you." Like,
what do you think of the two Crichtons, David Ross and Robert Llewellyn? I mean, obviously Robert had more of a crack at Crichton and obviously developed the character more, but how do you think the two compare to each other?
I think, and in part, we're used to, in American television, we're used to characters being replaced with other people. So we see that. But I really thought Llewellyn was Crichton. I did.
Yeah.
Just made Crichton for me. And so while I enjoy every episode that I watch, I think for different reasons. The episodes themselves, but that is just, he sealed it for me. I thought that he was absolutely Crichton. I thought his expressions were perfect, and he just embodied that for me, and I've never been able to get away from that.
I don't know if you like you've seen the Smeg Ups as well, the outtakes, but but whenever Rob Llewellyn blows a line or blows a scene or there's a mistake, he stays in character as Crichton. Like, for example, there's one where there was the scene where they crash and it's not even Mr. Lister's guitar survived intact. And he called it Mr. Guitar, and he's still in character in Crichton. He's going, "You see, everything to me is Mr. Guitar, Mr. Cat."
I know, I think, and I just...
Mr. Rather Sad Knob.
I think that is, I don't bust on actors. You know what? They have a job.
Yeah.
And they're entertainers, and I think the ones that do it really well, they really do. I think we all have our favorite. I don't like to follow the cult of celebrity, and I don't think following, Robert Llewellyn is at all cult of celebrity, right? But I just think that is one of the marks of really, there you are, you've messed up, you've held on to your character, you're still being funny, you're still in character. I think that's one of the hallmarks of really doing your job well. I loved him. I just love him. And so...
speaking of Bobby Lew, have you seen his Carpool series on YouTube?
No.
Right. If you go to his YouTube channel, he actually gives various celebrities a lift, like Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart and the Red Dwarf crew. He's given them a lift and he's filmed them, and they've just been chatting in the car. Fascinating.
That's awesome. I'm going.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
'Cause I think he's
a nice guy. He
seems like such a great person. And I rarely say that about people, but of all the people that you'd want to sit down and have a beer with, or just have, go out to dinner with for an evening, just talk to, I think he is great.
He'd be fascinating company, yeah. I think you're right.
I respond to nice.
Yeah.
I still believe in kindness, and I believe in niceness, and he just seems like a nice guy. He has a good blog too. Yeah. He has an excellent blog as well, which I think is brilliant.
Yes, he does.
And the Lou blog, I love it. And I like his navigation too, and his little ranty bits, which is excellent. Yeah. So I haven't watched Carpool, and I hadn't gotten around to clicking that link, and now I'm going to. See, look what you've done for me. That's excellent.
There you go. There you go. That's what smegheads do for each other, isn't it?
That's right.
Right. Who would you have between Norman and Hattie as Holly? Who would you prefer?
Oh God. There's so different aspects of Holly, which is so wonderful, and I know they explained it by someone I fell madly in love with. I know. Just oh, that one's hard. Maybe Norman. I might have to go with Norman on that. Right. I think I would just maybe for me, just for nostalgia, it's got to be Norman.
Right, yeah, Norman is a popular choice. I think we've had 2 or 3 people mention Hattie.
But part of the reason, and it's not that I don't, I think, again, one of the things that's wonderful about Red Dwarf is that these people who have been on the show, they're not all super famous or anything like that, but she's funny.
Oh, she's
really funny. And so I don't mean it as any sort of disparaging comment about her. For me, it's just nostalgia, but I think she's amazing.
Want to move on to atheism now a little bit, because you and I have something in common. We both used to be believers. Tell me about your journey through life and when you first started to self-identify as an atheist.
Well, it's sort of interesting for me because I never really remember growing up with a belief in God per se, right? It was not really, my parents, although my mother is far more, she identifies herself as Christian now as she's older. My mom's in her 70s now. But when I was young, my parents, they did take us to church, but many different kinds of churches. Like we never went to just one, it wasn't just one strict thing. And we also went to synagogue. And we also went to, my dad would take us to Buddhist temple. And, we didn't I don't recall any exposure to Islam. But then again, that would have been, the late 70s. And, I was born in 71. So this would have been in the, sort of 78, 79 era. And this area at that time, I don't know that there was anything you could have really run into. But, so there was a lot of different exposure. But I just sort of figured, well, it doesn't really make a lot of sense, but something, like many children, I was like, well, something has to have driven all of this and put it together, because I think as humans, we want to see patterns. Even as children, we want to see patterns. I know that my dad's goal behind it now, and I see this as an adult, was to expose us as children to so many different faiths that we could then say, no one of these is the right one. No one of these has all of the answers. But I had this sort of general sort of belief and disbelief, and it didn't really affect me too much until I ran into the person who I would then later marry. Not Martin, but my first husband.
Yeah.
And that was when it became very difficult for me, because my ex-husband is a cultist. I'm very upfront about that. He belonged to he may still belong to a fundamental Christian cult. And even though even though we were sort of married and we had this marital relationship, it was completely permeated by this cult thinking. And so even though they didn't have answers, he didn't have answers for what I thought were valid questions at the time. Things like, because he's also a young earther. This is a PhD prepared man with a professional career. He's a young earther. So I mean, I'm saying it can absolutely happen. But when I would say things to him like, and the entire fossil record means what? You know, I was okay. I was prepared to go so far as to believe in God, but I certainly wasn't prepared to go into this whole young earth kind of thing. And he never had an answer, as people never really do have an answer because there isn't one. But it became incredibly painful to try and reconcile what you can see as real fact. I mean, historical record fact. There are fossils. There is and for me also, I mean, bacteria alone, you're looking at billions and billions of years.
Yeah.
And you can't reconcile that and then to say, okay, I believe in the absolute tenets of this book. Do you really? Mm-hmm. Because you're cherry picking just the ones that sound good to you and your group. But at the same time, you're ignoring the rest of the evidence of your own avowed book.
Yeah.
And it can't make any sense. I couldn't fit it together logically.
No.
I couldn't. And then, and ultimately for me, when I realized that I had been thinking this way all along and just hadn't put it together, it really began for me after we had children. And specifically with my daughter, because I'm a reasonably intelligent person, and I was sitting there kind of evaluating and looking at my life and realizing that what I was doing was modeling for her that this was an appropriate marital relationship. This was the way that men and women should be together.
When you were with your husband and you had children, when did you have your first child?
My daughter was born in 1999, and my son was born in 2001.
So how long had you been with your first husband before this?
We were married in 1995, and had dated and lived together for a couple of years before then. And then Anne was born in 1999.
Okay, yeah. Did he try and indoctrinate you into this cult?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it started the day after we were married.
Right.
And really I knew in my own naivete, I was in my early 20s, and I couldn't conceive that people were like this. I really didn't. I was fairly sheltered growing up, and everything was really pretty normal. So I had no idea that people were like this. And we had lived together and dated for 2 years, from 1993 until 1995. And I literally woke up the day after we married in bed with somebody I had never met before.
Wow.
Yeah.
So basically, when you first given access to this cult, first started to learn about them, you straight away thought, wow, this is batshit.
Oh, absolutely. And it was completely batshit crazy. But I was married at this point. Yeah. So I have an overdeveloped duty gene. I do. And, and I thought, well, okay, this can't possibly last because it doesn't make any logical sense, and I'll be able to approach this logically, and then he will approach this logically, and we will come to a consensus. We never did. But this is a cult of people who they like to talk about what they call the 9 manifestations of the Spirit, 2 of which are speaking in tongues with interpretation, right? So it's spouting a bunch of gibberish, and then you, and it's always the same. It's spouting a bunch of gibberish, and then it's just sort of a verbal rehash of whatever part of the Bible you had been reading until then. It was clear to me. And it's part of that group think mentality. Well, if everybody's doing it and it's real and I know I'm faking, I'm just going to fake it until it's real to me.
Yeah.
And you could see that. You could absolutely see that. I refused to participate in that because it was bullshit. It was just like, I told them, I was like, I can't go there.
No.
Because if you believe that this is really God working through you, then there are issues. But really, it's a question of indoctrination. It was a group that were very persuasive and very, as all cults are, very loving up front. They make you feel included. They make you feel special.
Oh, they're great salespeople, aren't they?
Yeah, they're wonderful. And then they separate you from your family. They try to separate you from your coworkers.
Yeah.
And in this case, they like to keep you financially beholden by saying that that it was biblically wrong to live in debt. And part of debt would be having a mortgage on a home. So they wanted all of their people to be renters and very unstable. You couldn't have a job that interfered with your ability to go to these prayer meetings and things like that. So, and they would even say, I mean, the longer you were involved and like all sort of evangelical organizations, they want you to bring more people in, right?
Yeah.
So they would tell you to not concentrate on highly educated people, but you were looking for wait for it, salt of the earth.
Yes.
Find the people that were basically uneducated, gullible, and drag them in.
Yeah.
And I couldn't be a part of that. I just felt God couldn't be a part of that. And as that continued, and the relationship itself continued, I had already been educated enough to see that these were man-made structures. I knew that religion was man-made.
Yes.
Absolutely. Grew up knowing that religion was man-made. But then the more sort of I began to educate myself and the more I learned, the more I realized, well, it's not just religion that's man-made. This whole idea of needing something greater than yourself, that's man-made too. That's how we make, it's how we make each other feel better. But there is, I don't know how it is for everyone, but I experienced such profound relief when I realized that it was actually okay to say, no, I feel better without that stuff.
Yeah.
I was definitely, as a youth, I think I did believe certainly in God. I didn't know how to call God. I didn't know it was a higher power. Do you say God? But religion, my father, because I was the only girl, my dad was very worried that I would eventually be indoctrinated into some sort of misogynistic situation, which ultimately I was, my poor dad. And it was my parents actually who rescued me from that marriage when I came to them for help. But, that the case, he would constantly stress, look at the system. How does it treat you? How are you different from, it's not fair, but your experience is different from your brother's experience. Look at this.
Yeah.
So the religious trappings I never felt good about. But I was quite happy believing God until I kind of grew up and learned better and learned that there was better. So, because I thought, and again, having been raised being exposed to all of these different faiths, if you've got one creator, how is he going to make all of these different faiths? And how Absolutely. Are they all going to each be the right one? It can't be. So I used to want to believe that it was just like people who screwed up, the whole God thing. But then I realized, no, it's just people who screw up people.
And when is it you actually became an atheist then? Was there an actual moment? Use the
term. Yeah, I really began to use the term and absolutely identify myself as an atheist, as in not against, but contrary to theism and the concept of God. Uh-huh. I would have to say in the crystalline moment for me, my son was born in 2001. He got his diagnosis fully just at the end of 2002, beginning of 2003. And when my then husband turned to me in the developmental pediatrician's office at Kennedy Krieger, which is a hospital in Baltimore for developmentally impacted children, he looked at me and he said, Tim has autism because you didn't pray enough while you were pregnant.
Oh, Jesus.
In front of the doctor. And that was a crystalline moment for me. I was like, okay, well, here it is. We're at the end. And then I thought to myself, you know what? This is just bullshit. This has nothing to do with God. And you know what? There isn't one. There just isn't one. Life happens, and these genetic things happen.
Yeah.
And whether you are a good or bad person, I mean, my education, I have a liberal arts education. I already knew that moral conduct and moral codes and the thought process behind ethics, that far predates the Bible.
Yeah.
I never believed that that was where ethics came from. So, but in looking at that, I was like, okay, this is just, I can't even pretend anymore.
No.
It's from this moment forward. So yeah, that's when it happened completely.
Yeah. It's interesting you say your son is born with autism. How old is he now? What? He'd be 12 this year, wouldn't he?
He's going to be 13 in May.
Right, okay.
Oh, yeah.
It's interesting you say that because my partner Sharon has an autistic son as well. He spent the first, until he was like 16, if you said something to him, he'd repeat it. But if you said don't do that, Adam, he'd understand and he wouldn't do it.
My son's verbalization isn't that clear, but he's very similar in that. His receptive language, don't do that, put on your shirt, button your coat. Yeah, he understands that sort of thing, sure.
But now Adam can form sentences and you can have a conversation with him. So, I do know what it's like. I mean, he's not my son, he's Sharon's son, but I do know what it's like to have an autistic child. So
yeah, absolutely. And Tim's nonverbal. He doesn't speak. He can use a pad, it's a Samsung pad, and he can use it in terms of communication, but even then, I gotta tell you, he's a 13-year-old boy. He's completely driven by his stomach. So, his communication, there are things, even though Tim doesn't talk, he makes a lot of vocalizations and a lot of sounds. But, you absolutely know when he's pissed off, when he's happy, and really when he wants a sandwich. So, there are 90% of Tim is 13-year-old boy.
Yeah.
And 10% of it is the difficulties that we have because of the autism. I mean, he's autistic and he's apraxic and they have diagnosed mental delays and things like that. And he's also incredibly bright in certain ways. I have never had a lock in the house that he hasn't been able to get through. So, and I can tell you, I don't know how many children you all have there in the house, but I just have the two, Ann and Tim. Ann is developing, Tim is not. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. They're still going to argue in their way over toys and what television program gets watched and who gets the last set of cookies. It's all the same. It is. But so people, I still all the time, and that's why the whip round with Adam was so funny. I still get all the time, aren't you sorry that you had your son vaccinated and that caused him this terrible debilitating autism?
Yeah, that's...
And then I, crank my jaw up off the floor and I'm like, okay, let me start this round of education again. Let me explain to you why this is again.
I find, anti-vaxxers repulsive people. I really.
Absolutely. They're unconscionable.
They're not They're not so much. They are repulsive, but they're just ignorant. Just like you say, the young earthers, pro-lifers, I think are ignorant.
I will give everybody having seen the indoctrination process, I'll give everybody that first statement. Well, you can't possibly be right. The Earth is only 6,000 years old. Aren't you sorry that vaccines damaged your son? Or, it's terrible how you're ending a life, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then, I'll give him, I'll give you that. And then if I respond logically and with evidence and you say, no, because God said, then I'm like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
But if you are a person who truly is ignorant, because everybody's ignorant about something.
Yeah.
It's like willing to and if your response then is, really? I had no idea that there were all of these studies that vaccines actually didn't harm children. Like, because you will,
Yeah. You may get people to think, you may get people to do a U-turn on what they originally thought.
It might happen, very rare, I think. Very, very rare. People tend to be entrenched in these beliefs because we hold on to our belief systems, don't we? You know?
Yes, and they're very, very hard to let go of.
Even my mother is not a fan of religious institutions. So, you know, but my father certainly, my dad was a police officer and he saw some pretty nasty things in the 50s and 60s brought on in DC by religion.
Yeah.
And, you know, so I have always been sort of a raging anti-establishment, anti-religion person. But now I can see it as there's just so much damage that is done to the psyche.
Yeah.
And especially, and it impacts me so powerfully now because I have a daughter and now she's a teenager and I look at it and I'm like, you cannot expect to be successful if you really believe about yourself, if you truly believe that you are a second-class citizen, which is what every book religion teaches.
Oh,
every book religion teaches that. And to raise a child in that environment when you are responsible for the molding and shaping of their thought process, especially as they're young, that's unconscionable to me. That's just criminal to me.
I think Christopher Hitchens used to put it this way, you're born sick and commanded to get well.
Exactly. Yes, he did. He did say that. And, you know, you tell children from the moment that they're born, God says there's something wrong with you. You are stained and there is something wrong with you. And these are the ways you're going to get past that. But you live under that every day. To have that, whether tacit or overtly said to you every day, there's something wrong with you. There's something wrong with you. And not make that part of your internal dialogue. And we do that to children, and then they spend the rest of their lives trying to overcome that voice in their head. And you wonder, I mean, which is why I, like many people, say, you know, the belief in religious God, the belief in God, is the first step toward teaching your daughters to enjoy abusive relationships.
I would agree.
Yeah.
I would certainly agree with that. And I think it's also the first step in teaching your sons how to be abusive.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And, you know, then you continue to focus on disparity and widen the gap, and you find yourself in situations where we are now. I mean, and in my country in particular, you know, I grew up in an area where very few of my friends actually went to church, or at least didn't admit that they did. We were busy. We had stuff to do on the weekends.
Yeah.
And so in seeing it now, especially with this sort of artificially fomented Tea Party movement, they're so loud and they're so brash. And every time I look at a woman involved in that with that sort of vacuous, empty, frightened look in the eyes, I think to myself, you do realize that the very people you are professing to admire, they want to control every aspect of your body, every aspect of your thinking, and they don't want you to have any individual rights at all. And you just stand in line to hand it to them. How do you do that?
I think it's interesting that after the McCain-Palin campaign of 2008, after Sarah Palin lost, McCain said to her, he mentioned the emerging Tea Party, and he said, don't join them. He said they'll ruin the Republican Party. And what's the first thing she did?
Oh yeah, she
went
left
over.
right on the bandwagon, and
if sorry,
caricature of herself.
Absolutely, if she's the poster girl for the Tea Party, I mean, goodness me, if Sarah Palin was a British politician, she'd have been laughed out of Parliament probably a decade ago when she first emerged.
And see, what a lot of people don't see on the international scene is that there's a huge complement of the country who laughs at her as well.
Yeah.
We're laughing at her. But you don't see that because our media only shows what it shows.
Yeah.
So she looks like she's a viable candidate. But you have this entire group of moderate people. We are bad as Americans. We say things to each other at the dinner table like, oh my God, she's a fucking crackpot. She'll never get it. But then those are the same people who are not vocal. The people who are vocal are the people who will jump right on that bandwagon. You know how often people will ask you who would be your prized guests at your dinner party. Who do you want to have?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Nobody ever asks you who would you not want to be stuck in an elevator with for the next 3 hours when the power goes out. And my idea, if there was a hell, my idea would be stuck in the broken elevator with Michelle Bachmann and Sarah Palin. Because, when the doors were finally opened, I'd be the one to go to prison because I would have strangled both of them. So it's just, I'd be like, oh, I did the world a favor and now I've gone to jail. But it's, and it's a terrible thing to say, but the only reason is because I look at them and I'm thinking, you can't be that stupid. Not really. You can't really be that stupid. So you're parroting this either to get votes or to do what worse yet, to do what your advisors are telling you to do. Are you really willing to be advised in this area? And, is it that important to you? Because of course politics are a professional sport here.
Well, you mentioned earlier, Jessica, about who would you have to a dinner party.
Yeah.
I would actually have Sarah Palin and Michelle Bachmann to a dinner party, but on the other side of the table, I would have Mr. Christopher Hitchens.
Yeah, that would be okay.
I would just watch.
Yes, that would be okay. And a slightly, a voyeuristic evisceration of that kind of lack of thinking would be great fun to watch.
Yes.
And part of what happens here is that these people are surrounded by their advisors and their political team, and they're constantly told, you're wonderful, you're doing the right thing. It's almost a parody of the whole child left behind thing.
Yeah.
We're so afraid of telling you, no, I'm sorry, you're just effed up. You are fucked up. And you're not thinking and you're not being logical. Because we don't confront that.
Yeah. See,
and again, if you really want to know about your own culture, you should travel.
Yes.
I've had a lot of opportunity to travel in a lot of different places, and I'm aware of how Americans really are perceived. I get that. And some of it we bring on ourselves. I mean, we can laugh at ourselves. We really can. But we are, and if you've spent any time here, we have this reputation for being sort of rude and callous and stuff, and then certainly what you see on news channels and stuff, that's true. That's the image, but really we're unfailingly polite in a lot of ways. We don't want to tell you that you're that stupid. We don't want to tell you that, we don't want to say, that's absolutely crazy. You need to shut up now. We don't want to do that.
I've been to America twice, and every single person I met in both my trips to America were very, very polite, very respectful, and actually intelligent. And this is another stereotype that is labelled at people of your country, that you're all absolutely fucking thick as two short planks, and that just ain't true.
Yes, I know.
Because there are people like you, there are people like Cherokee Autumn, there are people like Crystal Content, there are people like Renee Hendricks. There are thinkers out there. As the aforementioned Michelle Bachmann, Sarah Palin, and certainly Ann fucking Coulter, certainly aren't three of them. I mean, they wouldn't know logic if it came up and bloody kicked them in the hammocks, would they?
Well, they wouldn't. The danger of Ann Coulter, and she is, and Ann Coulter is by far of the three the most dangerous.
Oh, absolutely. Agree.
She expressed herself in a far more sophisticated manner, even though what she says is completely ludicrous. But she has a better command of language. She has the ability to be biting, and and although not as good in recent years, but she also one time epitomized what that side of the political spectrum really likes, which is a blonde, attractive, and yet completely devoted to the party line.
Yeah.
Personality. She is very dangerous, and she has a huge platform and a large following, and that's difficult.
Have you still got that pad there of YouTube thingies?
Yeah.
Okay. Write down Jeremy Paxman versus Ann Coulter, because Jeremy Paxman, I don't know, you may have seen him on Newsnight when you were over here.
Yes.
Newsnight presents a very, very acerbic, very cutting. He actually interviewed Ann Coulter once, and he just completely devastated her. So that's one thing to put on. The other thing to put on is Katie Hopkins. Katie Hopkins is the UK version of Ann Coulter. Nothing to say, says it too loud.
Right, exactly. And,
Not really politically, more morally. Katie Hopkins offends a lot of the morals of the British people, but she's kind of an Ann Coulter figure. I think she kind of models herself on Ann Coulter.
oh, she must do. I'm looking at the photos. The first thing it brings up is a bunch of images.
Yeah.
Oh, that's all Stepford creepy.
But she's a failed reality TV contestant. She appeared on the UK version of The Apprentice, got to the final, and got rumbled that she was only there for the publicity and the celebrity. So, right, okay, let's move on. Let's go to what your favourite song is and why, Jessica.
Oh, I have blogged about this recently. Well, not recently, but several months ago. I blogged about this because music was so important in my family growing up. It absolutely was. And, ultimately, it's like movies. Can I pick just one? Can I have just one favorite? I don't know. So I tend to break them down by genre. I grew up in a house filled with jazz, and we didn't have a lot of money when I was growing up, and one thing that we did have was music and cutthroat card games. So we did that. And 1 O'Clock Jump was absolutely formative for me. But my favorite song, oh God.
1 O'Clock Jump, who's that by?
You're not up on your jazz?
Not really, no. It's not a big thing over here. Certainly wasn't when I was growing up.
Actually, it's Count Basie.
Count Basie. Yeah, I've heard of Count Basie.
Yeah, and that's actually funny. That is one of the things that brought Martin and I together, was this sort of shared love of music.
Right. No,
yeah.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, and that was it was absolutely formative for me. But I don't know if you've ever seen the film, Bird, Charlie Parker, about Charlie Parker, the Charlie Parker biopic.
Clint Eastwood directed it.
Yes, did. Absolutely directed it. It's got a fabulous soundtrack. So while it's hard for me to pick an absolute favorite song, though I will go with 1 O'Clock Jump because it's so personally meaningful for me. Charlie Parker is my ultimate musical hero, and everything that he did has influenced what I do. So yeah.
Now, this has 3 parts. You probably know what's coming. You only have to answer one. You don't have to answer all 3, but you can if you like. So, Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter, Star Wars or Star Trek, John McClane or Jack Bauer?
Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, and Jack Bauer.
Okay, briefly explain why each choice. First, Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings is just better written than Harry Potter, and I loved Harry Potter. Don't get me wrong. Very entertaining. Absolutely loved it. Kids loved it. I'm all for Harry Potter. I'm also all for J.K. Rowling being rich as shit. I love that. But Lord of the Rings, I think, is a more intricate story, and I like the way that that they arc back and forth together. From an English point of view, I just prefer that.
Right.
And so there's that. Star Wars versus Star Trek is the hardest one for me because I carry my geek card right out there.
I know.
But yeah, I'll put that shit down right now. But the reason being, I prefer Star Trek in some ways for entertainment, but I can ignore those first 3 sort of incarnations of the reboot of the Star Wars series. I'm talking about just the classics, episodes 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah.
And I think when my first time seeing Star Wars came out in 1977. I was 6 years old. My brothers took me.
Yeah.
It was the first movie I ever saw in the theater.
Mm.
So there's that one that is profoundly influential to me.
Snap.
Yeah. So that was, it was absolutely an amazing experience. But what I really liked about it, I always thought Luke, I'm sorry, was a bit whiny. I did find him a bit whiny.
You're not alone.
Yes. But no, it was my first, I think it was really my first, entertainment idea behind the fact that you can get to be evil pretty fast by trying to be good. When your intentions are good, you can still end up being viewed as a monster. And it was one of the most, those original storylines where, you know, you have these archetypical characters and everybody has a storyline that they're going through, and you can, with every good intention, absolutely, by your actions, turn out to be a horribly despicable person. You can choose to change it in the end as well. So yeah, Star Wars for sure. And Jack Bauer because, you know, I confess I like movies where things blow up. I enjoy that. I really do.
You'll love Man of Steel, then.
Oh God, you know, yeah. I like where things blow up. It's all right. I was, you know, although, my daughter was so funny. She was like, yeah, that's, Henry Cavill and his amazing abs. I was like, yeah, I know. But, I think Jack Bauer is just and it's difficult for me to say that because, I have a brother who, my oldest brother works, for the government. And so, there's kind of that younger sibling thing of, I don't want to admit that I like the thinking man's anti-terrorist guy, but, I thought Jack Bauer was just a more nuanced character. He had troubles, you know, and it wasn't just about, and I do think, as many people do, the first Die Hard was really fun and entertaining, and after that you're just watching Bruce Willis make money being Bruce Willis.
Disagree on 3. On Die Hard with a Vengeance. I thought that was a great film.
I thought there were some campy moments in 3, like some tongue-in-cheek, but the first one, of course, Alan Rickman made it for me. I don't care about the rest of him. You know, he's just brilliant.
Oh, I love Alan Rickman. I love Alan Rickman, period. I mean, whatever he's in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And 24 is coming back. 24 Live Another Day. I don't know. Yeah, have you heard about this?
Yeah, I know there's going to be, and I'm not surprised. It was certainly a successful franchise. Absolutely. It's politically the right time for it as well. We need when you think about it in terms of our own political situation, we need something else in the entertainment industry that will continue to ramp up that generative, everybody's against us, but we're going to the world situation. Yeah.
And the good thing is this one's taking place in England as well, so.
Yeah.
And Chloe's in it. Whoa. Oh, lovely.
You know, which will make you so happy. Yes.
Okay, right. Next one. Another pop culture question. What's your favourite film?
Gaslight. A very old film. Very few people have actually heard of it, but I think it's one of the best films of all time. Ingrid Bergman and Charles Boyer. That is, in fact, it has a very, very young 17-year-old Angela Lansbury playing the sex kitten maid. It was her introducing role, believe it or not. Oh. And Hitchcocking in nature, where Charles Boyer is trying to drive his wife crazy so that he can get the diamonds and the money. But it is, I think it's a brilliant film. And black and white, amazing camera work. I love it. I'm a fan of classic films, so yeah.
I like classic films as well. I remember seeing the picture of Dorian Gray, and Angela Lansbury is also in that. She plays Sybil Vane, who Dorian falls in love with.
Yeah. There was a whole life before Murder, She Wrote, you know?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's undoubtedly the role she'd be famous for. Also, she did play Miss Marple in a few movies in the 70s. I think she was in, Chris, which one? Murder on the Orient Express, certainly, I think, was one of them. But yeah, I think those two roles she'll go down for. But no, I was just very surprised to see her as because I'm a huge, nobody really knows this on Twitter, I'm going to make a confession now, but I'm a huge Oscar Wilde fan. I'm like a chunky northern Brit, and I like Oscar Wilde, and I'm not gay. Go figure.
Exactly. Who would have thought?
I know. Right, Jessica, what's your favourite swear word and why?
Now, that is so difficult. My husband would tell you that I really am an artist in profanity. I should preface this by saying my father was a Marine and then a police officer. Right. So some artists work in oils. My father worked in profanity. I like to think I do too.
You grew up in an atmosphere where the air was blue a lot of the time.
You know, it was when my mother was not present.
Right.
But The thing about American swearing is we like combinations. It's sort of like figure skating. You have your official points for each particular move, but when you put the combo together, you know, you get more points for that. So my favorite swear combination is motherfucking cocksucker.
Reminds me of George Carlin's 7 words.
Yeah.
TV. Cocksucking motherfucking cunt. Cocksucking motherfucking cunt. No, was it cocksucking motherfucking piss?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I mean, fuck is important, but that's just part of the daily lexicon. It covers all parts of speech, and you know, around here anyway. And I agree with what you've said on previous podcasts. You know, we cannot say arse. We can't.
No, and we can't say ass.
You can't say ass, no.
It's the chocolate starfish theory.
It really is, and it's absolutely perfect. It really is, and we don't say bollocks either.
No,
and we
do
shit. It makes us giggle.
But that's you can't say. You guys can't say bollocks. You know,
well,
you
we don't say
bollocks.
It's not really cussing. That's like diet cussing to us. That's why balls isn't really. It's not really swearing. It's kind of saying drat. That's what balls does. But that makes us laugh too. We think that's funny also.
And there's another word you guys don't say either, because I know this because it was actually the surname of a character on a long-running TV show in the 80s, and that's wanker.
True. We don't say that at all.
No.
And, you know, but it's so good when you guys say it. It takes on so much nuance and so many syllables. That's one of the ones where you have to say, yeah, I'm never going to get that, but it sounds really good. Yeah.
The Scots say the word wanker best. The Scots have got it down perfectly. So Ian, Scotsman abroad, if you're listening, I want to hear you say wanker, because I'm sure you'll say it perfectly, mate.
Exactly.
Bollocks is great. Bollocks is a great swear word. But you should use it more. Okay, right.
You sound puerile.
Yeah, I mean it does, yeah, but what the fuck, you know?
You're right.
Right, this is a new question. You're the first person to answer this one, okay? Because I thought it'd be an interesting question. What's the one thing you've always wanted to do, but fear that you never will?
Wow, that's actually that's a really good question. You know, the longer that I have been doing nursing, and I'm in the midst of getting my actual nurse practitioner qualification, which would then make me a clinician. So, you know, yeah, it's not easy, certainly not easy, but it makes you a practitioner differently. You know, you're then a clinical practitioner as opposed to just a clinician, which is okay. But the longer that I've done it, I have a very growing interest in pathology. I think pathology is fascinating. And the one thing that I really believe if I developed it, I could have the passion for is to go into pathology, but I don't think that I will have the time or honestly inclination to go to medical school, to go through all of that, to go to residency, and then be 55, 60 years old and finally become a pathologist. But I didn't know I would find it so interesting, unfortunately, until I came to it later in life. Yeah. So I kind of fear that. But I mean, I've had so many opportunities that I wouldn't trade. If I could go back and redo my schooling, no way. I've been able to travel more than a lot of people in my situation have, and been able to do a lot of different things. And so I'm really grateful for that, because I think it just, you know, it makes you different. That's all.
So you've not really got any regrets? But when it comes to the choices you made?
You know, if there was a way that I could have skipped my entire first marriage and still had my children, the 2 that I have, then yeah, I've done that, just because that was ultimately 11 years. But as much as they, like any child, drives any parent crazy, I wouldn't trade them. I wouldn't unbirth them. They're very difficult because they're kids. And my son has taught us. He is a child who lives completely in the moment. He has object permanence, so I know he has memory. Because he knows where he puts things and stuff like that. But he doesn't appear to anticipate the future, and he certainly doesn't live in the past. He is absolutely present at that moment, at any given moment. And having seen that then firsthand, it becomes much more difficult, truly, to teach this. This is what you have to, this is what people have to do. This is the way that we have to believe. This is the book we have to believe in. Because when you see it in practice, somebody who really lives moment by moment, the rest of it doesn't make much sense.
It sounds like your son and your daughter are growing up in a very, very safe and loving environment. Okay, Martin's not with you at the moment. I'm sure when that happens, it will be even better. But, I think for a single parent bringing them up, Jessica, you're doing an absolutely cracking job. So well done to you. Really, I mean that sincerely.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Jessica, tell me your favourite joke.
Oh, we'll leave the three-legged pig joke, which truly is my favorite joke, but it is hysterically long. And I'll tell you that someday. I'll tell you the three-legged pig joke. We'll have dinner and I'll cook and I'll tell you the joke.
Cool.
But other than that, I have a favorite physics joke. My undergraduate, is in English. I have a BA in English, so I have one in physics.
Yeah.
And, my favorite physics joke is really, it's a bad joke. Okay. Why did the cat fall off the tin roof?
I don't know. Why did the cat fall off the tin roof?
Because he lost his mew.
Oh, goodness me.
Okay, yeah, it's really bad, but I love that joke.
I also like when scientists die, we bury them.
See, that one's good too. I like that one also. That's excellent.
That's a good joke.
Yeah.
That's a joke. We have in England a prefix for a joke that, well, for a whole thousands and thousands of jokes, an Englishman, an Irishman, and a Scotsman. And
right.
These jokes usually end up with the Irishman being made to look stupid because the stereotype is that all Irish people are thick, which they're not, obviously.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But one of my favourites is very simple. An Englishman, an Irishman, and a Scotsman walk into a pub. The barman says, "Get the fuck out of here."
Excellent. I like that too.
And then you've got the politically correct Englishman, Irishman, and Scotsman joke, which is an Englishman, Irishman, and Scotsman walk into a pub. What a wonderful display of national unity.
Oh God. Oh, that's awful. I love it. That's really. Oh yeah, no, but it's good though. That's good. Especially now, currently, that's excellent. Really.
Right, last couple of questions, Jessica. Okay. What's your guilty pleasure?
The Osmonds.
The Osmonds.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
Wow. The whole family collectively have got more teeth than a xenomorphic alien.
You're absolutely right. The only person who has better teeth is Joel Osteen. But, but I'm talking about just Donny Osmond. I have actually no interest in him. He hops over to the Sean Cassidy era for me. I mean the whole group of boys. And yeah, absolutely. Yo-Yo is definitely right up there.
I'm going to confess something to you now and to all the listeners. I fucking love Crazy Horses by the Osmonds. There is a perfectly decent rock song lurking in there somewhere.
Somewhere there is.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I'm sorry for the jumpsuits and all of the rest of it, but I think Crazy Horses is brilliant. And that and Yo-Yo are my favorites.
Mm.
But, yeah.
No, but the riff is just so... It's an infectious riff. It's got that hook.
Oh, it really does. It really, really does. Now, I think Crazy Horse is a great song. And I love the Osmonds, and there you go. That's my guilty pleasure.
Well, Sharon would disagree with you on Donny Osmond because he did a version of Joseph in the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, and Sharon just watches that all the time.
It was excellent. I don't mean to say that it's not, but it's not really my guilty pleasure. I actually thought that was really. I thought everybody would enjoy that. I thought he did great.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I love Joseph in Jesus Christ Superstar. Even Jesus Christ Superstar I adore because he's got some great songs with it. The story's bollocks, but
well, of course, the story's completely idiotic. But no, it doesn't mean you can't enjoy Jesus Christ Superstar. I certainly
love Jesus Christ Superstar. Yeah, and probably my favourite song is the opening song after the Superstar overture. The first song is Judas singing a song called Heaven on Their Minds, and if you listen to the lyrics, well. Listen to the lyrics. They're just brilliant. Fantastic. They're actually delivered, when you think about it, from an atheist point of view.
Yeah, that's part of the reason why I think that I enjoy still Jesus Christ Superstar. It's a subversive, isn't it?
I think it was. I think the church, all sorts of churches actually, were up in arms when it was first released as an album, as a concept album in the late 60s, because it was Ian Gillan and I think Yvonne Elliman was also on the original album, the Ian Gillan album, but she was certainly in the film with Ted Neely.
Right.
But yeah, it did. I can't say from my recollection, even though I was alive then, I was far too young. But from what I understand, there was some controversy surrounding it. Blasphemous.
Yeah. And I mean, because that was the whole thing, wasn't it? It wasn't just Judas being jealous. You know, I think from the perspective of that song, that I think when you listen to the lyrics and you really do, you're like, oh, bad things are going to happen.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, can I just say, you know, if they were trying to tell the story of Jesus in musical form, then they nailed it.
There you go.
Okay, Jessica, final question. What would you have on your gravestone when you jot it?
Well, I'm hopefully going to be cremated and put in one of those nice little urns that you can now use to grow a tree.
Yeah. Because
I think we have enough bodies in the biosphere. But if somebody puts up a little plaque or something to remember me, what I would like it to say was, loved her children, loved Martin, hope she left the world a better place.
Certainly, I believe the first two, but the last one, you're a nurse. I've read some of your experiences on your blog. You do make the world a better place. So on behalf of everybody in the world who has ever needed a nurse, thank you for everything that you're doing.
Thank you. Thanks. That really does mean a lot.
Thank you very much for what you're doing. Is there anybody on Twitter that you'd like to give a shout out to, or are there any blogs or podcasts that you'd like to alert my listeners and followers to?
You know, I hear all the Smegcasts, so, you know, just about everybody mentions all the podcasts and stuff, and I listen to them. I do. I listen to them all, and I just...
Thank you.
And I think that, and I do think, just want to say, podcasts, they're not silly. Not at all. This is an opportunity that we, as people, have to really hear the voices of contemporaries and peers that aren't put through the filter of mainstream media. So I say, if you found one and you like it, keep listening and listen to others as well. But and of course there are people on Twitter that are so, you know, they're so important to me. I really interact with not only the people on my timeline, but the people that I consider to be, even though I may not have physically met them, they really are friends. They're my friends. And I care about what happens to them. So, Deep South Athey and Set Gecko and Kevin, who's K-Sol in 1958. Yeah. And, you know, they're like my family. Every morning we have coffee. They just are. And there's Stephen, who's Philosotech, and Zoe Jen. She and I, you know, she means so much. And Rachel, right? 0079. She's up in Scotland, you know. And she's got this, she's done audio booze now. And she has this sweet, sweet little voice, but she's so funny and she's so lovely. And she's the person who makes the world brighter. Same thing as, you know, Kindinism, you know?
Yeah.
KINDNISM. Really, really admire the way she puts things together and the way she thinks she's such a compassionate person, and
Yeah.
it means so much. And, and I have to say Twitter actually brought me my first experience with other atheist nurses, JD and Ra and Bex and others, and now that I've met them, it's an amazing thing, because I really did kind of think I was alone.
It is like finding kindred spirits, isn't it?
It is.
It's like,
really is.
You get up, you either look at your phone or you switch your PC on or your tablet, however you access Twitter. You get a coffee and you sit and hang out with your buddies.
Exactly. I mean, what would I do without Marvin the Martian, who's going to have coffee in the morning and that sort of thing. So yeah, it's, there's a way in which everyone says that social media can be destructive and isolating and so forth. But my point has always been is that it doesn't have to be. Well, like anything else, it's all in how you use it and how you behave toward the people who you're interacting with. So,
one productive thing that you have done, and I hope you don't mind me mentioning this on this podcast, but a few weeks ago, our friend and ex-Smegcast interviewee, Atheist Sam, was in trouble. Myself and Zoe put some reaches out to people to help Atheist Sam because he was going through some pretty bad financial circumstances. He didn't have any food. He'd lost his connection to the internet. And you donated a sizable amount to help him. So I know how thankful he was, but I just wanted to say on behalf of Sam and all of my listeners, all of my followers, and anyone who listens to this, thank you for doing that, Jessica. It's very, very generous of you.
When you have the opportunity and means to help people, I don't always. No one does always, but when you do, and you can, it not only makes you feel good. I tell this to my kids all the time. Of course it makes you feel good because you're doing the right thing. But when you can help somebody and it really makes a difference, that's a privilege.
Yeah.
And you're lucky to be able to do it. I felt lucky to be able to do it. So yeah.
Well, we appreciate that. So thank you very much, Jessica. It has been a real pleasure speaking to you. We've been on nearly 2 hours now. The time's just flying. We've covered a lot. I haven't asked you the full 20 questions, but I always promise. I know, but I always promise each guest a return visit for the questions that I didn't ask you. So don't worry, I'll have you back on. I may have you back on with someone else. I may have you and Marvin on the same edition if you like, and we can just all sit together and shoot the shit. That'd be great.
Oh, that'd be great. That'd be great.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It would
all right.
be.
Oh, that sounds okay. And thank you so much for just giving me the opportunity. It really was great to talk to you, and I have been nervous as hell. So thank you so much.
There was nothing to be nervous of either, was there? It was just a
Not at all. No, it's great.
Well, no, we'll definitely do this again, Jessica. Not a problem.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Okay. You're welcome. Take care. Have a good day. Give my best to that husband of yours and look after the kids, yeah?
Yeah, will do. All right.
Take care, Jessica. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Jessica, give us your best impression, your best impersonation.
I really don't. I don't. Well, I do an excellent impersonation of a lizard, but that's visual. You have to see that. So I'm not particularly good with voice, but I will say this: when I got married, it was perfect for us. We went to Gibraltar and we had a great time. It was really good. And on the flight back, there was this woman who she just kept staring at Martin, and she was staring at him like, how did you end up with her? And that's not okay. And he referred to the fellow that she was with as the piggy-eyed guy. And he did have kind of a sort of stuck together and very weird. But anyway, I guess he had enough money to take her to Gibraltar for a holiday or whatever. So, all right. When we get off the plane in Manchester. We went through Manchester. We get off the plane and Martin and I were separated for a few minutes, and anyway, this girl comes up to me and she goes, oh, he's so lucky. He's so handsome, you bloke. He's so lucky. And I thought to myself, you bitch, I'm just taking your eyes out right now. Ah, she's the most hideous person I've ever seen. And now that all right, so I've been to Newcastle now and I've seen this hair and I'm like, okay. They wear buns, right? But they're about the size of a large brioche. They're huge. And they sit on top of these girls' heads. And it's just like, what the hell is that? So, and she just, I'll never forget that. This is so lucky. Oh, you're so scared. That's scared. I'm like, oh my God, shut up. It must be what it's like to listen to people from down south in Virginia, you know? Yeah.
I thought you were going to break into Clarice Starling then, because she's kind of West Virginia, ain't she?
Well, she's from West Virginia, and I have to tell you, in Virginia, we don't want them back. So
Okay, well, what I do usually is if someone does an impression for me, I do an impression for them.
I did as well as I could. I think you owe me.
Yeah, so I usually edit my impression out. Sometimes I'll leave it in. But I'm going to do an impression for you now. And it's going to be Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter. Now, what did Mick say to you? Multiple Migs in an Excel. He hissed at you. What did he say? He said, I can smell your cunt. I said, I myself cannot. You use Evian skin cream. And you sometimes wear Le Duton. Stay.
That's awesome.
That's my Hannibal Lecter impression.
I like it. That's awesome.
Do you want to hear a little bit of Crichton?
Yeah. I want some Crichton.
An excellent suggestion, sir, with just 2 minor drawbacks. 1, there are no such thing as jet-powered rocket pants, and 2, there are no such thing as jet-powered rocket pants.
That's really not bad. That's really not bad at all. You spend a lot of time doing that.